Let's begin the process by building our low-res base geometry that we can bring into mudbox. So we're actually going to start in Maya, but if you want to build your base geometry in something like Softimage or 3ds Max, those three applications have a really close working relationship with mudbox, meaning we can send assets back and forth really quickly. Otherwise, you can use whatever application that you want and just use, for instance, an OBJ export and bring that in, whatever you're more comfortable with. We're going to be using Maya in this course. So let's just go ahead and start with a cube and bring this in. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of scale this up. I'm going to scale it up to maybe 150. Make it pretty large. And let's go ahead and freeze those transformations. Now we have the cube here. We might have a tendency to think that we want to actually start modeling and shaping this. And if you have a really good idea of what you want to build, then you can certainly do that. I'm actually going to build something very, very simple and do most of my shaping in mudbox. So I think that you may be surprised at how simple the base mesh looks before we take it into mudbox. So let's go ahead and start doing this. Now, to have an idea of what we're going to be actually building, let's take a quick look at the image that we're sort of going by. And this is Eddie's image that he created in the Fundamentals of Character Drawing course. So if you want to go through the actual drawing of this caricature, then feel free to do that. But you can see how the proportions is kind of smaller at the top, and it tapers down to this really huge neck, a larger jawline. And so we'll just kind of use this as a guide. Now, obviously, this is a line drawing, so we're going to have a lot of flexibility in how we create this, but as far as proportions go, we'll kind of use this as a guide, and then we can also use other images. But just keeping that in mind, I know I want it to be wider at the bottom. So I'm going to start by just scaling this up to kind of create the taller head shape. And let's go ahead and jump down into the polycube node here and start to add a few subdivisions. So for the subdivisions along the height, I'm going to go ahead and maybe add 10 or so. Okay, along the width, let's add maybe 6. You can see how those squares are nice and proportional there on the front. They're not stretched out. On the depth, let's go ahead and add maybe 4, so not quite so many, and we'll shrink that down just a little bit. So we basically have this kind of subdivided tall cube here. Now we can start to build out the neck. So I'm just going to take some polygons at the bottom. And whenever we start to do this, it's always good to check and just make sure you don't have anything else selected. And wireframe is a good way to do that. Let's go ahead and extrude those down. And I can use our Show Manipulator Tool sliders to help us out here. So I can go ahead and dial that down to the length that I want. Okay. You can see I can change the offset, so I can make that a bit larger at the bottom, give that a little bit of that taper that we saw in the image. We can also start to add some divisions. So I'm going to just add maybe 4 divisions. All right. So we've got the sort of topology for the head. Let's go ahead and start to add a little bit of the edge loops that we're going to need. So I'm going to add some geometry for the ears by just extruding those. We'll go ahead and extrude those in. I'm going to just hit G to repeat that extrude and then just pull them out in the Z. All right. We can create a loop for the mouth. Now keep in mind, just hitting G to repeat that, keep in mind that the topology or the model that we're creating right now is not really meant to match the shape of the final model, the final sculpt. We're not trying to model it here in Maya. We're going to do most of our shaping in mudbox. Now, if you have a really good idea of what you want it to look like and you're more comfortable in your 3D modeling application, then go for it. Go ahead and build it in Maya, let's say, and then do your detailing in mudbox. But mudbox can really be used to take something that's very simple and do a lot of your shaping and sculpting in that application, which I think is really, really nice. So let me go ahead and do the same thing for the eyes. I'm going to just take a few of these polygons, make sure I don't have anything else selected. Let's go to extrude. And I'm going to actually use the offset slider here just so I get a good idea. So that's 7.3, and I want to repeat that over here. So go ahead and again set that offset to 7.3 just so we got an exact match between these. Otherwise we could cut them in half, cut this in half and then mirror it over to the other side just so it's exactly the same. Now if you take a look at this, you see that it's pretty sort of silly looking. It's just this flat polygon cube man sort of thing here, but we're actually going to use this base to create our 3D caricature. So before actually in the lesson, let's actually take out the bottom part of this. We'll go ahead and delete those because we don't need those. Now we could at this point add the nose in here if we want to. We've got a little bit of time, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that in. This is going to take a little bit more work than, for instance, adding any of the other pieces. So let's go ahead and just click on that center line there. I've just clicked and then shift double clicked on the next one, selected all of those, and I can double click on this. And so we're just left with half of our model. All right, so now what we want to do is use our split polygon tool. And we have the interactive split tool that we can use. I also like to use the original split polygon tool. So if I just hold down shift, right click and go to split, I can access that original split polygon tool. And we can come in here. Now from the corner of this eye, we'll go ahead and drop down and start to come across here. And let's go ahead and come across down to the bottom here. Now coming up here, I want to get rid of this triangle, so I'll just extend this straight across. And we'll select that cross piece there. All right. Now we'll be doing a little bit more in the way of topology here, but I just want to take this and extrude it out. Before I do that, I'm going to actually connect this up with this corner down here. Okay, so we end up with something like that. Now up at the top, I want to extend this past the brow a little bit, so I'll go ahead and bring this up over here and just cut it off in the middle, and then bring this across like that. Now let's go ahead and grab some of these polygons here, and let's actually mirror this before we do that. It's probably a good idea. So let's go ahead and mirror our geometry back, and we want to mirror it in the negative x. We can look at this. This is pointing this way, so it's the positive x. Negative x is where we'll mirror it. We want to merge vertices. We'll go ahead and mirror that. Now we can select our nose area. Okay, and go ahead and extrude that out. Before I do that, let's make sure that this is welded, merged together, and it is. All right, so let me take all of these polygons in the center here that we've created, and I just want to extrude them straight out. All right, and then I'm going to take these at the top and start to bring those back in. So I am doing a little bit of shaping, I suppose, but we'll go ahead and leave that as is. So again, really sort of silly looking mesh, but let's use this as our base geometry. We just want to get a base piece of geometry that we can then really manipulate in Mudbox. So now that we're done here, we'll go ahead and in the next lesson take this mesh into Mudbox and start to do some overall shaping for our model. So we'll go ahead and do that next.